Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine. I welcome you all to today's session of the Hindu Newspaper Analysis, a place where every single day at 10 a.m. we analyze the most important news stories from the Hindu newspaper, both from the prelims and the mains examination point of view. Once again, a quick reminder, as soon as this session comes to an end, you need to go over to our Telegram channel to attempt the quiz based on the topics that we discuss right here to revise whatever you have studied. On that note, let's see what are the topics that we have taken up for today's discussion. For today's discussion from the Hindu newspaper, we have taken up a couple of topics from the front page. The first one being the Government of India has abstained from voting in the recent UN General Assembly resolution that was asking for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. India abstained from voting, and this article explains why did India take this decision, what is the reasoning behind it. Second article is about MGNREGA, how there has been a 7.5% decline in the active workforce. Means the number of people working under MGNREGA have come down by 7.5%. Third article is about whether the police stations in India are ready to install the DNA system. Why is it required? As you know, a few months back, there was a law passed under which now the Government of India is trying to ensure criminal identification. That is, anyone that is arrested, earlier only their fingerprints were taken. Now their biometric data also, such as eye scans and even DNA, would be collected to have a complete foolproof database. Are the police stations in India ready to have such technology or not? This is what this article is about. Then from the prelims examination point of view, we have a few important stories. Again, from the front page, we have an article on Kathaprasangam, that is an art form from Kerala of narrating stories. We'll be discussing what that is. Then the WHO Southeast Asia Forum will soon have its meeting to nominate the head of this region, and also the meeting talks about what are the goals that they are now trying to achieve in this region in the coming years. Then from Bangladesh, Bangladesh is near the completion of the memorial that they have been building for a couple of years to honor the Indian heroes, the Indian soldiers who laid down their life in the 1971 liberation of Bangladesh war. And in the end, we have an article about cloud seeding, how an experiment of cloud seeding has been successful and what can we learn from this experiment. Let's begin with the first article. The first article, as you can see on the screen, is about the center government deciding to abstain from voting in the UN General Assembly. So what exactly is this issue all about? I'm sure all of you have been keeping a very close eye on the Israel-Hamas war, on what is happening from either sides. You see there are articles written, there are people, politicians making different types of statements. Amidst all of that, what happened in the UN General Assembly was that there was a resolution introduced by Jordan. This resolution was asking for a truce and a ceasefire in Gaza. Mainly, it was asking Israel that you should stop pounding Gaza, you should stop firing your missiles, your weapons, etc. in Gaza, because it is leading to a loss of life of civilians in large numbers. This resolution, when it was introduced, the nation now would have to vote on it. The nations usually have three options. They may vote yes, they may vote no, or the third option is they may abstain from voting. Means they might refuse to vote. This is what India has done. India has taken this option of abstaining from voting. That is, India has decided that it's better for us neither to vote yes nor for no. Now, this is a strategy that India has used in many cases in the past as well. I'll give you some examples as we go ahead. Meaning that India has said we are not in support of asking for a truce and a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, what does it mean? What is India's stand on this issue? Does it mean that India wants Israel to go ahead and continue the bombing that it is doing in Gaza? Not really. The Government of India explained its stand by saying that we are not happy with the wording of the resolution. What is the problem here? In specific terms, the Government of India said, we will vote in support of this resolution if and only if it condemns the attack carried out by Hamas on Israel. The article says that the government of India is not happy by the way that the resolution has been worded, by the way that the resolution has been written. This resolution has been sponsored by Jordan along with many other Arab nations. So most of the nations who have sponsored this resolution are the nations that have been in support of Palestine for a long time. Indian government says that unless you explicitly condemn what happened on the 7th of October by the hands of the Hamas terrorists, we will not vote in favor of this. This resolution was officially titled as Protection of Civilians and Upholding Legal and Humanitarian Obligation. Now, what happened to this resolution overall? Although India abstained from voting, the resolution was passed in the UN General Assembly. Now, the question is, if it has been passed by the UN General Assembly, what does it mean? Does it mean now it is binding on Israel to stop pounding Gaza? Does it mean it's binding on Israel to have a ceasefire? Not really. Please understand this. Resolutions of the UN General Assembly are not binding. So even if a resolution has been passed in the UN General Assembly, it is not binding. Unless there is a resolution passed in the UN Security Council. When the UN Security Council passes a resolution, it becomes binding. And then if you don't accept to this, the Security Council members will have the responsibility to implement this. However, in case of a General Assembly resolution, these are not binding. These are mostly on paper. These are mostly just formalities being done so that the nations can tell the world what is their view on a certain ongoing issue. India has made it very clear that we will not accept any such resolution unless it specifically condemns what happened on the 7th of October. India said that nothing can justify what was done by the Hamas terrorists. All the victims, be it on one side or the other, all the victims are equal. Any loss of life is a tragic loss of life. Doesn't matter if it's happening in Gaza or in Israel, and that is why if you're asking for Israel to have a truce and to stop pounding Gaza, you must also first specifically condemn what happened on October 7th. The interesting part is India, in its explanation, did not name Hamas directly. India just said that we would like to have rejection and condemnation of what happened on the 7th of October. Now, this was a line taken by multiple countries. Canada also, for example, had the same argument. Countries such as France also had the same argument that you should include a condemnation of what happened on 7th of October. Although many nations demanded that there should be an amendment in the resolution, but this amendment was not passed. The reason being, for these amendments to be passed, you require at least a 2/3 majority vote. Unless you get a 2/3 majority vote in support of some amendment in the resolution, it will not be passed. Since 2/3 members did not really support this amendment, we did not have this amendment introduced in the resolution. Now, if you look at India's stand, there are a lot of things that you need to understand here. Why did India vote in a way that it did? What are the countries that supported this resolution? What are the countries that stood against this? Let's see those details also. Amongst the countries that supported or sponsored this resolution were Jordan, as I said, the main sponsor, Bangladesh, interestingly, Maldives, Pakistan, even Russia and South Africa. So these were the countries that were sponsors and co-sponsors of the resolution. Now there are two ways to look at this. You might look at this as these countries being anti-Israel, but these countries say that they are not being anti-Israel, they are just against the loss of civilian life. On the other hand, there are some nations that voted against it specifically. Israel obviously, the US obviously would expect that. 5 small Pacific Island nations that have been getting aid from US and Israel. And then Austria, Croatia, Hungary, all these are the countries that voted against this particular resolution. There are multiple countries such as India, Canada that demanded an amendment which was not carried out. Interestingly, the stand taken by France was also a lot in discussion. What did France do? France voted in support of this resolution. Although they said that there should have been an amendment, they said that we would have wanted condemnation of what happened on the 7th of October, but still we do support this because we think that any civilian does not deserve what is happening in Gaza, and that is why we will support this. As I said to you earlier, even if the resolution has been passed by the General Assembly, it would not have any binding impact. It is only the Security Council resolutions that have a binding impact, and the Security Council members have the power to get those implemented. Now, the interesting part with India is not very new in this position of abstaining from voting on such issues. We have been trying to take a middle position on a lot of conflicts. For example, in the Ukraine-Russia war also, we have been abstaining from a lot of these resolutions that were introduced against Russia specifically. Now, you might argue it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. Many people say it is a good thing, it's a wise policy decision because it keeps all the doors open for India. India, as you know, is a close partner of Israel. We have a lot of technology exchange agreements. We buy a lot of weapons from Israel. On the other hand, we also have close relationship with the West Asian, that is the Middle East countries. We have recently signed, as you know, the India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor as well, and we do not want to jeopardize even that project. So for India, it's better to take the middle path rather than taking one side or the other and be seen in one camp against the other. However, on the other hand, there are people who criticize this decision of the government of India. Many people argue that if the government of India really is planning for India to become a major superpower, a superpower does not sit on the sidelines. A superpower is prominent enough to take a stand and then make sure that they are able to convince others about their individual position. If you are going to sit on the sidelines, if you are not going to take any side, then there is no point of your global aspirations. Now, there are multiple examples of how India in the past has abstained from voting. You have the examples of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We even have some earlier examples of the UN Human Rights Council when they were voting on a resolution whether an international UN team should go to Sri Lanka, for example, to investigate the civil war crimes. India abstained from voting there as well because our long-standing position is we do not support any kind of outside interrogation into any nation. We see it as a compromise on the sovereignty of a country. We do not support any kind of resolution where you have an international team coming into another country to investigate any crime. So this is not the first time that India has abstained from voting. We do abstain from voting whenever we think that we have to go on the middle line and ensure that our relationship on both the sides remain good for the long run. The second article that we have taken up is about some facts regarding MGNREGA. Now, MGNREGA, as you know, and I'm sure all of you are very well aware of it, is a rural guarantee employment scheme. It's a rural guarantee employment scheme. In simple terms, if you are living in rural areas, you have the right to ask for at least 100 days of unskilled manual labor. Unskilled manual labor. So in a year, at least 100 days of unskilled manual labor work will be given to you if you are living in rural areas. The government will pay you, that is the minimum wages that have been decided by the government of India. This scheme has been successful in elevating poverty from some of the poorest regions in the entire country. This has been able to generate employment. Not just this scheme has also been able to ensure that mass migration from rural to the urban areas is slowed down. Because people in the rural areas do not get enough jobs, do not get enough opportunities, many of them have no option but to migrate to the cities. With this scheme, the objective was to slow down that migration as well. One other important takeaway of this scheme, which we do not really pay attention to, is the impact it has had on women workforce. Under MGNREGA, 1/3 of the jobs are reserved for women. That at least 1/3 jobs will be given to women. But the reality is, over 50% jobs are actually given to women. So 1/3 are reserved, but in reality, over 50% jobs usually go to women under MGNREGA. So MGNREGA has been, in that sense, a good safety net through the government of India given to the rural population. The problem, however, is the people who oppose this idea, the people who don't like MGNREGA, say that it is not building any skill. It is just giving minimum wages. It's not allowing people to upskill and earn a better pay. This is not something through which the people can actually upskill themselves and aim to earn better. There are these arguments given on both the sides. It says that the quality of infrastructure built under MGNREGA is not up to the mark. Most of the infrastructure does not really continue or has a long life. It usually gets deteriorated very soon and we have to build it again. Anyways, now that you know the background of MGNREGA and the various aspects of it, what is the article all about? The article is all about the fact that there is a 7.5% decline in the active workforce under MGNREGA. In simple terms, the number of people asking for MGNREGA jobs has reduced. So it was 15.5 crore in the last financial year. Now it's 13.33 crores as per the data available till 6th October 2023. However, even though the number of people have reduced who have been asking for work under MGNREGA, the demand for work has increased. Means one single person, if earlier the person was demanding work for, let's say, 50 days, now they are demanding for work for more than 50 days. So the number of workers may have reduced, but on the other hand, the demand made by every worker, demand per worker, of how many days do they want the work has increased. Now, how do you understand this? Number one, it's understood in a way that a lot of people are opting to maybe migrate to the cities because they are not happy with the pay that is given to them under MGNREGA. Maybe they are not happy with the quality of work. Maybe they are not happy with the payment scheduling. And that is why you will see that lesser number of people are asking for work because they are opting for other options which are more attractive for them. On the other hand, the people who don't have the option to go to the cities or people who don't have the option to opt for any alternate livelihood, they are demanding even more work under MGNREGA. In simple terms, you can assume this, that the situation of rural economy on both these indicators is not good. Because if you would have had people demanding lesser work under MGNREGA, that would have meant that they may not need this work. By remaining within the village, they might have better opportunities. But that does not seem to be the case here. It can be stated that the workers number of workers have reduced, maybe because many of them were also deleted. Many of them could not show their proper identification. That also may have led to these issues. There are other problems as well which might have led to decrease in the number of workers under MGNREGA. As you know, there is a problem between the central government and the West Bengal government over MGNREGA. The central government has stopped the MGNREGA scheme in West Bengal, alleging large-scale scams in the payment distribution under MGNREGA work in West Bengal. That may have also led to the MGNREGA workers or the number of MGNREGA workers coming down. As per the report, there are 14 states that have reported an increase, while 6 states have seen a decline in the number of MGNREGA workers. The biggest decline obviously was in West Bengal because the scheme was suspended there by the union government, because the union government thought that maybe the state is not utilizing the money well and there is a large scale corruption. There are other states as well in which we have seen a drop in the number of workers: Himachal Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, etc. Himachal Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh were the ones where decline was seen, while in states such as Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Tamil Nadu, we saw an increase in the number of workers asking for job under MGNREGA. Ideally, what should be the position of MGNREGA? Ideally, should you be happy that a scheme like this exists? Not really. For an economy to go ahead, for an economy to have more taxation, for an economy to have more people earning at a significant level, you need to push them towards skilled jobs. The basic difference between skilled and unskilled job will be when you are in a skilled job, your chances of earning better amount are obviously much, much higher. Your chances of learning some skills, getting higher for that, getting higher amount of money for that skill increases considerably. If you're an unskilled manual labor, you would demand or you can't demand a lot more money for your work even after 5 or 10 years. But when you're a skilled labor, when you gain experience in a certain skill, you become eligible for getting more money. The government of India has also been asked this question about why is it that the number of MGNREGA workers are reducing. The economic survey, in fact, had said that the decline in demand for MGNREGA is due to growth in rural economy. The government of India had argued that because in the rural economy people have better jobs, people have more opportunities to earn better money, that is why maybe they are not asking for MGNREGA work. But again, that does not seem to be the case if you look at the numbers more closely. These are some of the other facts about the budget that MGNREGA has attracted from the government. As you can see, the blue line here, the blue bar, is what the government gives in the budget. So in the beginning of the year, this blue bar is the budget that the government usually gives to MGNREGA. And as you can see, every single year since 2015, the actual expenditure of MGNREGA has been much higher than that of the budget given. As you can see, every single year, the actual expenditure, that is in the yellow graph, has increased, has exceeded the budget that was allocated for MGNREGA. What does it indicate? It indicates the fact that maybe the government has been hoping that we don't have to spend so much money on MGNREGA. They have been hoping that maybe people don't ask for jobs under MGNREGA, but that is not happening. In reality, more and more people are asking for MGNREGA jobs as compared to what the government had hoped. As you can see here as well, the number of people who have been demanding work, there has not been a great decline. There has been slight decline, as you can see, but not a great decline. Also, this upward tick, as you see here, why is it that so many people were demanding jobs under MGNREGA? This is the 2020-21 line in slightly about middle of the year. This is the lockdown period, when a lot of people lost their jobs in the cities. They had to move back to the villages. They had no other option, they had no other job, and that is when the MGNREGA acted as a big safety net for all of them. So yes, there is importance of a scheme like MGNREGA. It is important because it allows the government to provide a safety net to the rural population. But if a family is dependent solely on the earnings through MGNREGA, there is not a very high chance of them increasing their income even in the long run. The next article that we have here is about whether the police stations are equipped enough to handle better technology such as DNA testing. The reason why this article has been written is with respect to the Criminal Procedure Identification Act passed in April 2022. As you know, this law, when it was passed last year, became a center of a big debate. The debate was, before this law was passed, when someone was arrested, their fingerprints were taken, their photos were taken in case of certain offences to create a database of all the criminals. Now this law says that when the person is arrested, you don't just have to collect fingerprints, etc. Now you have to collect biological samples, you have to collect retina, iris scans of the arrested person as well. This led to a lot of debate last year as well. The debate was, is it not an infringement of the people's fundamental right? Is it not an infringement of the right to privacy? Also, how confident are you that the data by this or data that is stored by the security agencies will not be misused? We have seen multiple instances of data leak happening from the side of the government, be it Aadhaar data, be it the data from the COVID app. So what is the guarantee that this data also will not be leaked? Now, as of today, as we are talking to you today, this has not been implemented so far. Just because a law has been passed doesn't mean it will be implemented right away. When it will be implemented, that also is a date decided by the government through a notification. So it has not been implemented so far by the National Crime Record Bureau. The National Crime Record Bureau is still finalizing all the guidelines to make sure that this is implemented in a correct manner. What is this article all about then? The article again talks about the problems in this system, why the police stations and the police force in India is still not equipped enough to handle this precious and this critical data, that too in large numbers. Before this law was introduced, it was a Prisoners Act of 1920 that was used to collect data about the people who were arrested. Data such as finger impressions, footprint impressions, photographs of certain category of convicted person. Only these were the details that were collected. However, with evolution of technology, criminals found a way to forge their fingerprints, criminals found a way to forge all these details that were given at the time of their arrest. This is when the government thought that we have to make a better foolproof system. Also, since police is a state subject, different states have a different way of keeping all that data. In some of the states, they may not be very apt at collecting all this data. Let's assume a situation where there's a criminal who was arrested once in Punjab, whose fingerprints, footprints, etc. were taken. Now the criminal gets arrested for some other crime, let's say in Kerala, Karnataka, West Bengal or wherever. You might again take fingerprints, etc. You might not have access to Punjab's database. Then it becomes problematic to identify the same person. The idea was to have a national database with access given to all the police stations across the entire country. That is also one of the objectives of this particular law. As per the law, the National Crime Record Bureau will be responsible to store, process, share the data and also destroy the records. The records will not be stored for an unlimited number of years. The records will be stored for 75 years only. The database can be accessed by authorized police and prison officials across the entire country. Now, this requires a special kind of training. This is not a job that everyone can do, that is to collect all this data. Police across the states have been trained. They have been trained on other things as well. For example, in India, we have something called NAFIS that has been running already. NAFIS is National Automated Fingerprint Identification System, NAFIS. It was launched last year in 2022. This is a system under which when your fingerprints are taken by the police, they will give you a unique 10-digit national fingerprint number to all the suspects that have been arrested by the police, so that they can be identified anywhere across the country in multiple states. This is a system that has already been implemented. While taking fingerprints and giving this unique 10-digit number may be an easier proposition, to duplicate this and now to implement this with retina iris scan also may not be that easy. This law in its implementation has a lot of challenges. First, there is still an ongoing debate whether it is a violation of fundamental rights or not. You are taking all this personal data, not even making sure or not even sure that it will be protected 100%. That leads to questions on violation of right to privacy. There is not a great record of the government to protect all this data. We have seen multiple leaks in Aadhaar. Every few months, you will see some news that Aadhaar data has been leaked. No clarity on the rules for police officers. For example, even in this article, it has been suggested that some police stations have not given proper training to the police officers. The police officers are not sure for what crimes do we have to collect the data or not. For example, do you have to collect data for those who are under preventive detention or not? The law says no, but many police officers, when they were surveyed, they said that yes, even for preventive detention, we have to collect this data. So there is not much clarity even amongst the police on the rules of where and how to collect the data. The data is to be stored for 75 years. It will then be destroyed by the same people who have recorded this data. The owners and the responsibility of destroying this data is on the same people who have collected this data. Now, this also becomes problematic. What if the police station, what if the officers in that station are not competent enough to handle this? This should have been done by a much more responsible authority. There's lack of training to handle DNA. It's not an easy thing to do. Also, Many police stations in secluded part of the country, in rural areas, hilly areas, northeastern states, the Himalayan states, they still have a problem of lack of proper internet connectivity. For such a system to be successful, for such a system to be implemented properly across the country, we need to ensure that all of them have access to at least basic internet connectivity, which again has not been ensured so far. Since this article talks about NAFIS, that is National Automated Fingerprint Identification System, let me give you some details about that as well. This is a system that gives you a unique 10-digit national fingerprint number to every arrested person whose fingerprints have been taken. This will be the same throughout the person's lifetime, and different crimes registered under different FIRs will be linked to the same person through this unique number. For example, you have a unique Aadhaar number. Now, it doesn't matter how many bank accounts you open, doesn't matter in which state you open up a bank account, it will all be linked to one single Aadhaar number because that will be your identification. Similar is the case here as well. The ID's first two digits will be that of the state code in which the person was arrested for a crime, followed by a sequence number. Also, when this is automated, it will ensure that tracking of crime becomes easier across the entire country, because right now, the most basic thing that all the criminals do is they run away from their state, wherever the crime was committed, to some other state, hoping that the state-to-state system will not match and they will not be identified. This is a system to ensure that that problem does not arise. These were the articles from the mains examination point of view. Now let's move on to some news stories from the prelims examination point of view. The first news story from art and culture is about an ancient form of storytelling narration from Kerala that is called Kathaprasangam. Please remember this name, Kathaprasangam. It's an ancient form of storytelling that is seen in Kerala mainly to narrate stories, to pass on a social message. It started as a way of passing on the social message about caste justice, about social justice in the society, about equality. But now it is implemented and it uses various themes, not just restricted to the theme of social justice. It began hundreds of years ago. The person who is said to be the originator of this was Neelkand Bhagatwar. This artist was also known as Satyadevan. He was the one who first chose to tell some stories about the caste system reality, about how the caste system has to be neglected, how people living in the same society deserve to be on an equal status and we deserve an egalitarian society. Now, Bhagavatar was a follower of the famous social reformer, and you might have heard his name in history, that is Narayan Guru. He was the one who led this movement to get Kerala as a society rid of the caste-based system. Now, as you know, in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, there have been multiple such movements in 18th and 19th century specifically, and even the 20th century, where the movements were against the prevalence of the caste system to set up an egalitarian society. You might have heard about Periyar in case of Tamil Nadu. Similarly, there was Narayan Guru in case of Kerala. This Kathaprasangam, the lyrics were written by the social reformer Pandit K.P. Karuppam. Also, there have been many other scholars and poets who have been working to pen down lyrics that can be narrated in the form of a story in Kathaprasangam. Now, there are a few details that you must remember. This art form is mainly about lyrical or narrative storytelling. It may also include acting and singing as well. It's not just about speaking or narrating a story. There are costumes, makeups, which are not really used here. So it's a proper simple art where a person in plain dress clothes will narrate the story. You can see this picture to understand this. You do not see the artist wearing any fancy forms or fancy uniforms, no fancy dresses. It's just common clothes and the person narrating the story with the help of musical instruments as well, as you can see here from this story. The main artist, that is Kathikan, is a person who tells the story. He acts, sings with 2 or 3 accompanying instrumentalists. It is extremely famous in Kerala, and this is again a form of storytelling that is fast going beyond common culture, beyond the popular culture, and that is why attempts are being made to bring it back in Kerala as much as possible. The next article is about an upcoming meeting of the WHO of the Southeast Asia members. Now, as you know, WHO has various forums. They have divided the entire world into different regions. With every region, they have different types of teams, they have different types of priorities. India falls into Southeast Asia region. Every region is headed by a regional director that is decided by the member countries of this region. They are the ones who head and represent the WHO in this region. Now, a meeting of Southeast Asia members will be held to discuss the health issues that are plaguing the entire region and also to nominate the next regional director. Now, I'm not sure if you have seen, there is a lot of debate around one of the nominees who is trying to get to this position. There are two candidates who would want to be the regional director. One from Bangladesh, that is Saima Wazir, and second from Nepal, Shambhu Prasad Acharya. Let me give this to you as a homework. I'm sure all of you would know this already, but let me give this to you as a homework. Do tell me in the comment section, why is it that one of the candidates is in the news? What about these two candidates? Why is one of them in the news? What news is it exactly? Are there some allegations? And also tell me which one is India supporting. Is India supporting the Bangladesh nominee or is India supporting the Nepal nominee? Do tell me in the comment section after the video comes to an end. The regional director will take the post from the 1st of Feb 2024 for a 5-year term in total. Now, the reason why different regional forums have been formed by WHO is because different regions have different types of priorities, have different types of problems to deal with. For example, in our part of the world, in Southeast Asia region, there are issues such as maternal problems, there are issues such as neonatal tetanus, there are issues such as infant mortality, there are issues such as malaria, there are issues such as arising from bad sanitation. That is why WHO has a regional forum for different regions. For example, similar kind of issues might not exist in Europe. Similar types of issues might not exist, let's say, in Latin America. Depending upon whatever are the different priorities, we have different regions finding out their priorities. The report says 4 countries in this region, Bhutan, Maldives, Sri Lanka, Timor-Leste, they have already eliminated measles and rubella, which are one of the 8 flagship priorities of this region. What about some of the other things that have been done in this region? Maldives, Singapore, Thailand and Bangladesh, they have been able to eliminate lymphatic filariasis. Nepal and Myanmar have eliminated trachoma. India has been verified as UPSC free, while Sri Lanka, Maldives have eliminated malaria, which is again a big thing. India has not been able to do that. Thailand, Maldives, Sri Lanka have eliminated mother-to-child transmission of syphilis and HIV. Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Thailand have achieved hepatitis B control. The region has recorded 68.5% reduction in maternal mortality from 2000 to 2020. Now, it's obviously difficult to remember all of these. My suggestion would be first to remember India's specific finding, then focus a lot more on India's immediate neighbors, the ones that are in India's neighborhood. For example, let's say the SAARC countries. So focus on countries such as Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Myanmar, again what they have been able to achieve. That would be a good way for you to prepare, because again, remembering all of these might not be that easy. If you can, great. If you can't, at least remember what India has been able to do and what our immediate neighbors have been able to do. Now, if you go to the WHO website and try to search about the Southeast Asia region, you will get a lot of these details. WHO has a total of 6 regions, out of which Southeast Asia is the largest one in terms of population. It's about a quarter of the world's population. It has about 11 member countries. These 11 are Bangladesh, Bhutan, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, India, Indonesia, Maldives, Myanmar, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Timor-Leste. The regional office of this entire region is in India, that is in Delhi. This region has been given 8 priorities by the WHO. These are measles and rubella elimination, preventing non-communicable diseases, reducing maternal, under 5 neonatal mortality, universal health coverage with a focus on human resources for health and essential medicine, combating antimicrobial resistance, scaling up capacity for risk management, eliminating tropical diseases, and accelerating efforts to end TB. These are the 8 priority areas that the WHO has set for this region. I would suggest this is an important topic, especially for this year's prelims examination, because there has been a lot of talk on malaria. There has been a lot of talk about this recent election that is coming up for the regional director of the WHO. There has been a lot of debate and controversy all about it with regards to specifically one candidate. So make sure that you do read about this, that you do read this in detail about this particular region, the priorities that have been set up by the WHO, and what the WHO actually wants to achieve in this region particularly. The next article that we have here is an indication of the growing closeness between Bangladesh and India. Bangladesh is building a memorial to honor Indian heroes of 1971 war. Now, this is not something that just started. In fact, it has been under construction for a couple of years now. It is about to be completed. That is why it is again in the news. Let me first show you a photo and then we'll come back here. So this is basically what the photo is of what the war memorial looks like. As you know, Bangladesh was created in 1971 as a result of the Bangladesh Liberation War, where India fought against Pakistan, and India trained people from Bangladesh, trained their forces called Mukti Bahini to fight against Pakistan. Thus, the creation of Bangladesh owes a lot to the valor and to the sacrifice of the Indian soldiers. For the Indian soldiers who lost their life to fight for Bangladesh, Bangladesh has now decided to honor them by making this memorial. This memorial is being built or is built in Ashuganj in Bangladesh. This Ashuganj was a prime spot of one of the battles in this particular war. It's very close to the Indian border as well. I'll just show you a map in just a bit. It will have name of about 1600 Indian soldiers inscribed. It's expected it will be completed in the next couple of months, by December most probably, and the Prime Minister of the two countries are expected, again not sure, but expected to inaugurate, because again they will send an invitation to our Prime Minister. If the Prime Minister is available, he will go to make sure that it is inaugurated by both the Prime Ministers in next March or April. This is exclusively to honor Indian soldiers only for the 1971 war. This is not a new project. The foundation stone was laid back in March 2021 by the two Prime Ministers. This place, that is Ashuganj, is pretty close to India's border in Tripura, and you can reach it by road from India. I'll just show you a map here. This is the map. As you can see, this is Ashuganj. This is Agartala and Tripura. You can just reach here by road. So it's not very far away. One other thing that you have to remember, this is of extreme influence or extreme significance. During the war, the Indian forces were able to reach this place by crossing the Meghna River. And then they were able to go to Dhaka after this to take part in the war against Pakistan. The person who has been the principal designer for this memorial is Asifur Rahman Bhuyan. Do remember his name as well. This will have a lot of other things in the premise. It will have a museum. It will have flags of the two sides. It will have a bookshop, a children's park, and a food court as well. Similar to the National War Memorial, I don't know how many of you have seen this. It's in Delhi, just adjacent, just in front of the India Gate. You have the National War Memorial. Very grand. You should also visit it. It's a beautiful installation that is in memory of all the soldiers who have given their life fighting for India ever since our independence. The next story, the last news of the day, is about a successful demonstration of cloud seeding that was able to produce rainfall in Maharashtra. Now, I'm sure in geography all of you would have read about cloud seeding. Just in case you don't know, let me first show you the picture so that you can understand this easily. So the idea of cloud seeding is that aircrafts are used to inject silver iodide or similar substances into the atmosphere. And the idea is that they might induce rainfall from these clouds. They mimic the particles that serve as surface for condensation. It creates water droplets and it leads to more rainfall in that region. Now, this is not the first time that this kind of an experiment has been conducted. This experiment has been conducted in many parts of the world, including in India. The interesting part is it is not always successful because there are a lot of factors that have to go right in order for this kind of an experiment to be successful. This time around it has been successful. The experiment was carried out in the Solapur city, which does not get a lot of rainfall. That is why it usually faces a lot of drought. This experiment has led to 18% more rainfall in this city. The objective was to investigate whether this hygroscopic seeding of the convective clouds was able to induce rainfall or not. Due to this, about 867 million liters of water was seen in the form of rainfall. The rainfall was approximately 8.67 mm more as compared to the usual rainfall that we have. This study was conducted from 2019 to 2021. Now the experiment results have been published in the paper. For this experiment, calcium chloride flare was used for seeding the cloud. It releases these particles that trigger the cloud into condensation, and we have rainfall at the end of it. The experiment also found out that not all the cumulus clouds can produce rainfall. One of the most important factors that leads to the decision whether such experiment should be conducted or not is the cost of the experiment. The cost of hiring the airplanes, the cost of the airplanes going up and making sure that they are able to induce this rainfall from the cloud. For this experiment, there were foreign airplanes that were hired, 2 of them. If you have calculate the overall cost, the cost of these airplanes, the cost of these chemicals and the water it was received later on, it can be calculated as 18 paisa per liter. So if you calculate the amount of water that was received in the form of rainfall and the amount of money that was spent in doing the experiment, it turned out to be about 18 paisa per liter, which is not bad. As per the scientists, once we use our own planes rather than hiring planes from outside India, the cost of this might be even lower. We might be able to reduce it, cut it short to about 50% or so. So this can be a good option going forward. It's not that it will convert the entire area into a very green or lush green area, but at least it can reduce the chances of drought. Also, it's not true that every single time we do this experiment and we will be successful. You have to choose the clouds very carefully. Which clouds do you have to choose? There is a 40% chance that this experiment or the cloud will become successful. It's not always going to be true, but it is worth giving a shot when the people are suffering from drought-like conditions. Cloud seeding, as I said, is not something new. It has been done in various countries. There are multiple applications of cloud seeding. For example, it creates rain, which is helpful for agriculture. We have seen this in Karnataka in 2017 under Project Varshadhari. It is also being used for power generation for many years, especially in countries such as Australia. It has even led to control of water pollution. It leads to minimum summer flows into the river. It also makes sure that the wastewater discharge from the municipalities' industries is diluted. So when you have a lot of wastewater, how do you make it cleaner? You pour a lot of fresh water into it so that the result is that the pollutant will become diluted. So when you have a lot of, let's say, a very dirty lake or a river, you want to reduce the pollution, you just have artificial rain over it. It has also led to dispersal, hail suppression and cyclone modification as well, and it has been used for these purposes for about 50 years or so in US as well. It has been found to tackle air pollution as well. In fact, the Central Pollution Control Board have thought of using cloud seeding to control Delhi's pollution as well, although it has not been undertaken as an experiment so far, but there are talks about that as well. So all these are applications of cloud seeding. You can add to that tourism as well. When the government of India, any government thinks that a particular place does not have enough water, so it's not attracting a lot more tourists than it should, they can have artificial rains here to make sure that we give a boost to tourism and local industry as well. This brings us to the end of today's discussion. These were the important articles from the Hindu newspaper. Make sure that you attempt these 2 practice questions based on India's voting pattern in the UN and also the MGNREGA work days reducing. See if you are able to write these answers on a student answer writing portal. You can read each other's answers on the portal, give feedback to each other. The link to this student answer writing portal is given in the description of the video. Also reminding you, you have to move over to our Telegram channel. Make sure you attempt the quiz based on the topics that we have just discussed so that you can revise all of these. I'll see you tomorrow now, 10 a.m. Do join us for the next session of the Hindu Newspaper Analysis. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.